red,
blue and the red and the grey. Yeah, it's
your
very,
red, got your red on your wall.
that's right. Yeah, pink and all sorts of colours and the coloured cap.
There we
Yes.
go.
So here we are.
Here we
Wonderful.
are. Well,
Yeah,
we're welcome
Winter
everybody to
Fair.
the Winter Fair. Winter Fair,
I
Winter Fair.
know. How many years now? Well, this is becoming a real fixture, isn't
It
it?
really is becoming a fixture. This is our fourth Winter
Fourth
Fair.
year.
I think
Yeah.
it kicked off the year I started at Macmillan Education.
2019. Yes, I remember well. I've been in all of them as well.
You
And
have.
yeah.
Yeah, so
And,
we've had several. So it's been you and me and
and of course, Greg, who's not
Greg
here today,
Spearback
who's
is
off
not here
having
today.
an, yes, but
Gallivanting around Vietnam.
gallivanting all over the globe. You think
But we
you
have
get
also,
Greg, if you're watching on your mobile.
I'm sure he is, yeah,
Oh, of
in
course.
Halong Bay. He's busy on his phone watching the wind. And we've also got Ben Crystal. He's been here every year.
Yes, yes. And we've got David Crystal as
Got his
well.
dad,
Dad.
his dear dad, David,
Yeah.
and Chia Suan Chong.
Wow, what a star lineup, eh?
Oh,
Yeah.
amazing. So
And
let's have the chat box. Let's see how this goes.
yes, well, the chat box is really filling up. In a couple of less than a minute, we've got 86 people writing more. They keep coming from all over the world. Poland, Turkey, Warsaw, from Poland, Czech Republic,
Brazil. So we've got great. So
Brazil,
we've got that
Georgia.
side.
We've got from Germany,
And don't
Lithuania.
forget, Louise, don't forget, we've also got Facebook and LinkedIn is
Oh,
live
yes.
now. So this is hello everyone on Facebook, hello everyone on
Exactly,
LinkedIn too.
exactly. Hello, everybody, on every platform possible.
Yeah, yeah.
Welcome,
Lovely stuff.
everybody. Lovely to see you all here. Thank you for joining us.
So we're not going to take long to get started.
No,
In a minute,
no,
we'll be inviting Chia onto the stage,
that's right.
virtual stage. But before we do, let me just make sure I'm all ready. Yes, that's ready.
You're ready to go.
Can you see that, Louise?
Yes,
Great. Look at
crystal
that
clear.
slide.
It's wonderful.
Isn't it great? I want to go through it.
Yeah,
I want to consume it somehow. So we've
yeah.
got the top English through the eight. No, right at the top, the Advancing Learning Academic Program. This is part of a wider year-long CPD, teacher training, teacher development program. Going down from that, we've got English through the ages. That's sort of the area, the thing we're looking at today. English through the ages, sort of etymology, pedagogical history, ancient history, I think, as Chia will explain later.
That's right.
Macmillan Education Winter Fair. It's our fourth, as Louise says. Lovely to see you here again, Louise.
Lovely to see you. It's always a pleasure to share this space with you.
Isn't it just? It's always such, it's just always got that such a joy. I always feel like
Yes,
smiling. I always feel like
yes.
I've been injected with joy or something coming to these. So we've got two talks. The first talk we've got is from Chia, lovely Chia Suan Chong, doing a talk on rhetoric, bringing ancient communication to the modern age. And then we've got Ben and David Crystal doing a talk on 180 years of new vocabulary. These talks today are absolutely splendid. They've already done it today once already. So a huge thanks to the three of them for doing this whole, it's such a marathon to do this. I know you only see them, you know, for sort of 40 minutes of this day, but just they're doing this all day, basically. There's time for breaks and there's time for sort of getting a breather, but it's a bit of a marathon for the speakers. So thanks a lot to all three of them for agreeing to take part
Absolutely.
3 times. And
Such
just
energy.
yeah, such energy. Just love them. So many. Brilliant to see them here. While I've got you, I'm guessing this question has already come up. Do we get certificates? Do we get recording? Can we see the slides? Those sort of questions, they come up regularly, which I completely understand. So to answer the question now, within the next week, you'll get an email from us. If you're watching on Zoom, you'll get an email from us with your certificate of attendance and a virtual goodie bag. And in that goodie bag will be some sort of goodies, you know, the sort of thing you usually get in a physical goodie bag. Obviously, a digital thing. We can't deliver things. I think I made that joke every year. But the goodie so there'll be lots of goodie stuff, but also you'll get the recordings will be in there for your convenience, and also the slides will be in there as well. So you can sort of refer back to it and watch it again and again. And trust me, today these are absolutely rewatchable talks, 100%. If you're ever going to see a rewatchable talk, the talks today are the ones. So that's coming within a week. We've got a new podcast. While we've got you, we thought we might just let you know, seeing as we're here, and it only launched last week. So Harry Waters and I talk to each other, and we talk to other people. We invite them in to have a bit of a natter and a chinwag about ELT things, basically anything related to ELT, or sometimes a bit wider and looking at education, or looking at the wider teacher, the role of a teacher a bit more widely, or really sort of specifics. I mean, we looked at smartphones for an episode as well, so we can look at something wide as what is a teacher, and we can look at something quite specific like smartphones use in the classroom, that sort of thing. Anyway, QR codes there. You can listen on podcasts wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Very much well worth watching and or listening to.
Cheers,
absolutely
Louise.
Dynamic. Yeah, really good. You're a great duo, eh?
Nice one. Cheers, Louise. It's easy with Harry Waters. He is an absolute card. Okay, I think it's time to introduce our first speaker. Is she there? Sorry, actually, I forgot to say on while Chia's coming in, if you're on Facebook or LinkedIn, you'll get a link towards the end of the session where you can get your certificates. So just keep an eye out for it. Hello, Chia.
Hi, Chia. Hello.
You're on mute, Chia. You can stay on mute, but it would be easier for us if you could.
Hello, hi. Thank you, Will and Louise. So good to be here.
Lovely to see you, Chia. Thanks so much for joining the Winter Fair.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. It's a no-brainer.
Exactly.
Okay, so just to introduce you really quickly, Chia, I've got to embarrass you and tell the audience who we've invited to this talk. So Chia Suan Chong is a prolific member of the ELT community, if I can say that, Chia. I said it earlier, but I think you in my mind you're kind of just, you're everywhere at once. You're at this event, you're at that event, you're presenting here, you're doing this thing online, you're posting about these things. And also because we've got a shared love of board games as well. You've got the board games community and you post about that. And we obviously messaging about this event and other events. And you kind of, I just love how much you're just the everywhere person. You're all over.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's of course that's not a bad thing. It's just so good. You're such a key member of the ELT community. It wouldn't be the same without Chia. So thanks for being here. Anyway, I think you can see her sort of vital stats on the screen there. So I'll leave them up for a second. But have a great session, everyone. We'll see you in about half an hour or so.
Good luck. Have a good session.
Thank you very much, Will and Louise. I think I should share you my slides. So I'm really, really, really pleased to be here today and super honored to be able to share the stage with David Crystal and Ben Crystal. In my mind, they are your main act of today. I'm just the warm-up act. I'm just the starting act. Will approached me to say that he wanted me to do a presentation about English through the ages, something about history or what we can learn from history about English language teaching, communication. And I immediately thought I have to talk about rhetoric. Why? Because rhetoric is one of the oldest fields of study in human history. And I'm not exaggerating because we can see that it goes as far back as 2400 BC. It used to be in the Western world one of the three ancient arts of discourse. So the three being grammar, logic, and rhetoric. So if you lived back in the ancient times, say in Greece or even in the UK, not so much the ancient times, rhetoric was a subject you would probably study at university. And this went on for centuries. It is often associated back then, and even so now, with politics. We've heard expressions like, oh, it's all just rhetoric, meaning that, you know, it's just all persuasive talk and someone trying to influence our opinions, but there's not much substance in it. We use a phrase like it's all just rhetoric to kind of devalue what someone is saying or someone's presentation. We have expressions like it's just a rhetorical question, meaning a question that doesn't really need an answer. Rhetoric today is often associated with style, with influencing techniques, and not so much the content and substance of it. And I want to show you today how rhetoric goes beyond style. In fact, this was widely debated way back in ancient Greece. So you had your original Greek philosophers talking about rhetoric in terms of discourse, of style, of how you present your tone of voice, the way you pause in speech. And then you had the sophists who came up against the original philosophers and said, it's not all style without substance. Surely, if you want to be persuasive, if you want to convince someone of something, you've got to have content. You've got to have substance. It's not just how we say it, it's what we say. And I was thinking about how this really relates to English language teaching. For years, and even now, we're teaching students to use accurate grammar, accurate vocabulary. We teach them fancy idioms and stylistic devices, hedging language, to help them sound more like someone who speaks English as a first language, to sound more precise, to sound more accurate, to pass exams. But do we look at the content of what they say? When our students stand up in front of a classroom giving a presentation, we might make notes on, error correction on grammar points and vocabulary usage and idiomatic usage. We might reformulate their vocabulary, but do we look and comment on, give feedback on the content of what they're actually saying to you? So, what is rhetoric? Perhaps you might have guessed from my introduction that rhetoric is the art of persuasive communication. It is the effective use of language, which we are in the business of, and arguments to inform, persuade, or motivate. In other words, it is effective communication in order to influence someone's opinions, to inform them of what we know, or to motivate someone, a call to action. Do you recognize these people on your screen? If you do use the chat field and tell me who they are and what do they have in common? What do these 4 people have in common? All right, Rosinta, you're the first to answer. Yes, absolutely. Right, so we are recognizing Martin Luther King from the left, and you've got Winston Churchill on the right. Paola, absolutely. Alicia, Oprah Winfrey is right next to Martin Luther King. And who is the 4th person who's in between Churchill and Oprah Winfrey? Does anybody recognize her? No, not Ellen. Let's see if anyone gets this. Absolutely. Yes. Kong, you said Brene Brown. A few people coming in. Vicky, Naeem, Brene Brown is the correct answer. Brene Brown is an amazing speaker. This photo was taken from her Netflix documentary. If you subscribe to Netflix, do watch it. You'll see that she is an incredible speaker, able to move and empower people. She speaks a lot about vulnerability and empathy for others and connecting with people. Definitely worth a watch. Now, what do they all have in common? Fabio, you're absolutely right. They all have the gift of the gab. What does that mean, the gift of the gab? They are public speakers. They are amazing speakers, great speakers, good speakers, eloquent speakers. Yes, being articulate. Yes, being articulate is part of having the gift of the gab. And I would say the speakers coming right after me, Ben and David Crystal, definitely have the gift of the gab. Now, let's move away from thinking about famous people like Brene Brown and Oprah Winfrey and think about someone you know personally who is incredibly persuasive. Who do you know? Could be someone in your family, someone in your workplace, one of your students even. Who do you know who is incredibly persuasive? And then I would like you to think about the skills that person has. What makes them incredibly persuasive? When you think of someone who is really, really persuasive, what skills do they have that make them so persuasive? So we've got Steve Jobs. So someone you know, unless you do know Steve Jobs. Oh, thank you. Someone said me. My mom, my son. Okay. So they use rhetorical questions. They know what they're talking about. Thank you, Paulito. Determination. Okay. Many politicians, absolutely, which is why rhetoric is often talked about in line with politics, right? Children asking for presents. My daughter, okay, so self-confidence is a big one. I got a few people saying self-confidence, expertise, life experience, honesty. I like that. People who are gentle and calm, definitely not me then. Clarity, I love that. And as you can see, some of this is what we do with our students, right? Teaching them to speak clearly, to speak with confidence. But some of it's also to do with life skills, like, honesty, empathy for others. Yes, absolutely. Being knowledgeable of the content. So not all style and no substance, but actually having that substance as well. All right, we'll come back to this in a moment. But we can agree that someone who is good at rhetoric is someone who is good at debates, public speaking, and persuading others. And what they are good at doing in general is using language successfully, effectively, to persuade and communicate successfully. But we're not only talking about the style of the language and accurate use of grammar, fancy idioms, alliteration, metaphors, not just that, but we're also talking about the substance, the content of what they're saying. Are they constructing logical arguments? Now, we often think about rhetoric in terms of teaching students to speak, to convey a message, to inform, to persuade. And the same thing kind of happens in ELT classrooms, doesn't it? We focus a lot more on those productive skills like speaking and writing. But what about listening? What about being on the receiving end of other people's arguments? Now, if you think about a debate, when you are good at rhetoric, you're not just good at coming up with your own arguments, but you're also good at spotting fallacies in other people's arguments. And that requires critical thinking, able to spot cognitive, logical fallacies. And one thing I like doing is using adverts, print ads, to get students practice in spotting those fallacies in those persuasive arguments that they see in advertisements. And we'll come to that shortly. But we can't talk about print ads without talking about this guy, Aristotle. Now, Aristotle came after the sophists. After a lot of debate has been had about what rhetoric is, is it about the style or is it about the content? And Aristotle was definitely on the side of content. A person who is good at rhetoric has to have substance. He has to have good ways of persuading people. And he came up with these three core means of persuasion. So we have ethos, pathos, and logos. You might have heard these expressions before. Ethos focuses on authority, credibility. You might have heard some TED speakers start their talks by talking about their experience, their qualification, why they are the people who should be telling you this message. And that is ethos. They're persuading you to believe them because of their expertise, because of their qualifications. You should trust me because I am credible, and therefore you should believe everything I say to you. That's ethos. Pathos is all about emotions, feelings, getting someone to feel about, to feel what you're telling them, to engage their emotions can make your message a lot more persuasive. And then we have logos, or logic, giving them statistics, hard facts, showing them, why, the factual reasons, the logical reasons why they should agree with you, why they should be convinced by your argument. Breaking it down into these three means of persuasion, these three persuasive techniques, ethos, pathos, and logos, can help our students communicate and influence in a much more effective way. Now, I promised you earlier that I would show you some print ads of it doing exactly this. So let's have a look at the first one. Would you say this uses ethos, pathos, or logos? Now, I get that most ads these days use all three. A good rhetorician is able to use ethos, pathos, and logos, and it overlaps to try and sell you a convincing argument. But which of those three is this using most of? Perhaps you recognize some of these people in these print ads. You have David Beckham selling you a watch, and George Clooney selling you coffee, and then you have Julia Roberts selling you perfume. Because they are who they are, we could argue that they are authorities in a way. People trust them because they are well known and perhaps even well liked by the general public. When you see George Clooney, you feel like you know him. And so you start to trust what he's saying. So if George Clooney likes this coffee, it's probably good. I would go with ethos, right? Using celebrity endorsement to add credibility, to add weight, to add authority to that message. Now, we don't just use celebrities to add weight to an advertising message. We might also add weight by association. So we have here IBM associating themselves with the European Space Agency and therefore adding credibility to their product. You know, we're all about advanced technology. We're all about helping the environment, and that adds credibility to them, to their product, to their company and their branding. We also see one here. You might have seen this before. It is, you know, Oral-B's very, very long time running ad motto. Most used by dentists all over the world, most used by dentists in the UK, the #1 toothpaste recommended by dentists, etc., using experts like dentists, doctors to add credibility, authority to that product, and therefore ethos. But yes, May, you're absolutely right. There's some of logos in it. So it's kind of a logical argument, but very, very much ethos, authority. Now, we have to teach students to be careful when they are at the receiving end of these persuasive techniques, because logos can go quite, sorry, not logos, ethos can go quite wrong too. Here we have an ad for cigarettes by doctors who are adding authority and credibility, and then we have one recommended by dentists. Just because something is supposedly recommended by doctors, supposedly recommended by dentists, does not make it immediately more credible. We are encouraging students to think critically. We are encouraging students to question, is it really recommended by dentists? Of course, we now know that cigarettes are terrible for you. No doctor or dentist would ever recommend cigarettes. It is about getting students to unpack that message, that persuasive message, so that they are not vulnerable to that overload, tirade of information they're exposed to every day, online, everywhere around them. Another way of using ethos is not just using experts or celebrities, but to use everyday people just like you and me. And here we have these ads by Dove, who uses everyday people because there's this feeling that, you know, these guys are like me, and people like those who are like themselves. People like people who are similar to themselves. And so seeing yourself reflected in an ad draws people in. It is ethos in a way, but there's also an element of credibility because they are trying to champion beauty of all kinds. You can be gray, you can be flawed, you can be wrinkled, you are still beautiful. And that gives Dove that sort of kudos, that sort of credibility. And that, again, is ethos. How about this one? Which persuasive technique do you see right here? Is it ethos, pathos, or logos? What do you think? Yes, pathos. Oh, okay, lots of people saying pathos here. Brilliant. Absolutely. So pathos is about generating, inducing, triggering emotions in the person receiving, on the receiving end. So what emotion do you think this ad is trying to induce? What is it getting the viewer to feel looking at this ad? Trust, a pity? Okay. So you're feeling pity for the animal, love for animals. Oh, I like that, Bernadette. Guilt. I really think guilt is a big part of it. It's saying you would care a lot if it was as cute as a panda, but just because the animal isn't as cute as a panda does not mean we should care less for it. So yes, inducing that guilt empathy, responsibility, care. Yes, absolutely. Brilliant stuff. How about this one? What kind of emotion or feeling is it trying to trigger in the viewer? Now, notice that in the ad just before this, we are looking at cute animals. And here we have cute babies. And a great way of inducing emotions is to use animals and babies, because that those are kind of surefire ways that your viewer is going to feel something. Here we have empathy, care. The message here is that if you love your child, if you love your baby, you want to protect them. Yes, responsibility. And if you want to protect them, you would use our product, because our products keep your children safe. Absolutely. So again, it is using your emotions to convince you to buy their product. How about this one? What emotion is it trying to create within you? So this is a little bit different. Not so much, cutesy feelings of love and care, but fear. Absolutely, Bernadette, spot on. Fear of not declaring your income. This is the revenue and customs. So these are the people that collect your taxes. How about this one? What feelings does this add? So Pedigree is a pet food product, right? It sells pet food, dog food, cat food, etc. We've got loss, affection, care as well. Lonely, I like that, Tatia. Loneliness. It is, yes, it's bringing up those very melancholic feeling of loneliness, and coupled with friendship and happiness, right? Do you want to be lonely, or do you want to be happy? Do you want to be, with a faithful partner? Absolutely. Brilliant. How about this one? What feelings does this bring about in you? So a very, very different ad from the last one we just saw. It's not about melancholy. It's not about friendship and loneliness. It's about hunger, yes, desire, food, gluttony. It triggers that hunger, doesn't it? Greed. It makes you want to eat unhealthily. It's almost kind of going, yeah, you can treat yourself and pamper yourself, have that guilty pleasure. You don't have to always eat healthily. Yes. Interesting, isn't it? Now let's have a look at this one. So we've got two car ads here. Both of them are using pathos in a similar way. What feelings is it trying to generate in the viewer? I particularly like the one on the left. I think it's a very blatant use of pathos, suggesting power, luxury. Yes, absolutely. If you buy our product, you can fulfill your dreams. Exactly. You can live the life that you've been dreaming of. So it's appealing to that side of you, that self-fulfilled or unfulfilled side of you. And it is absolutely manipulation. In fact, all these ads are manipulation, Eduardo. And this is what we're trying to show students, right? How to unpack these ads so that we can understand the techniques they're using to persuade us. And once we're able to understand the techniques, the manipulation that's going on, can we then help students to develop that critical thinking skill and to help them to be much more judicious and careful with the messages they receive, the tons and tons of messages they receive every single day, every single minute? What emotion is this one trying to create within you? How do you feel seeing this? Zoe, love, maybe? Humor, I'm flying, Jack. Yes, Rosinda. Freedom, okay. I mean, if you've seen the Titanic, you know that this ad is a nod to that famous movie, but the fact that there's a bird in the face of the female protagonist suggests that it is trying to be funny. Absolutely funny. Laughter, joy is always a great way of engaging people's emotions, because when you get people to feel, in particular, when you get people to laugh, you get them to remember the product. They remember the context, they remember the product. And we can see this in multiple ads using humor, using fun, amusement, laughter. to have to make sure, to ensure that you remember their product. Now, here we have one by Volkswagen, which kind of uses humor, but at the same time, it's using a little bit of logos as well. It's using logic to say, this is why we're really good. We can park your car just like this porcupine. So humor, feelings, but a bit of logos, logic as well. Now, again, helping students to be aware when they are being manipulated. We see these ads also using pathos. You'll be happier if you buy this product, or creating feelings like FOMO, fear of missing out. Everyone's getting this product, but there's only 5 minutes left to go. If you don't buy it now, you'll never be able to partake in this happiness, right? Getting students to understand these manipulation techniques and think critically about it. Here we have another cigarette ad, that false message that, if you smoke this cigarette, the girls will fall in love with you. Again, get students to unpack the false messaging that is happening through these adverts, or the fact that this razor is so safe that you will pass it to a baby, right? Let's unpack this. Let's think critically about how they are trying to manipulate us into buying that product. Now, here we have a slightly different ad here. Which of the 3 persuasive techniques is being used here? Is it ethos, logos, or pathos? Logos, absolutely. So they're throwing numbers at you, they're throwing statistics at you, and hopefully you will believe those numbers. When it looks scientific, when there are lots of numbers, we accept it, don't we? We just assume those numbers are accurate. And these numbers seem to tell us that this product contains less fat, less calories than the other products, and therefore we can eat more of it. Now, we see that a lot in some of these ads. Here is the pet food ad again, but this time it's using logos to show us the components, the ingredients in the pet food, and all the amazing things this pet food can do. And again, if you see, the use of scientific symbols, scientific diagrams to make that seem more credible, to make it seem more, like an expert's created this, and therefore, forcing you or persuading you to trust them more because it looks so scientific. This ad, however, takes a slightly different take on logos. It's telling you everyone buys these potatoes. And if everyone buys it, then it must be a good product. And do you see that logical fallacy there? Do you see how that is false thinking? If everyone's doing it, then it must be the right thing to do, which we all know is not true. But this ad uses that logical fallacy, right? Everyone's buying it. It must be good. Are you buying it too? Now, here are some examples of the use of logos, but in a very misguided way, in a very manipulative way. We've got, doctors and laboratory tests tells us that Coca-Cola is good for children. So give your babies Coca-Cola. Now, we know that would be a terrible message to send out to parents. Today, we know that now. But again, using that logic of, let me throw you some science and hope that you believe me. And buy Coca-Cola for your children, or perhaps eat more sugar. So here we have another logos-based ad that is suggesting that sugar is good for you, and that if you eat sugar, it will be good for your diet, which I hope you're all laughing at your computers right now, because we know that is false news. Again, showing the students these ads, getting them to engage those critical thinking skills, and getting them to understand how they're being manipulated by ethos, pathos, or logos persuasive techniques. Now, when we talk about rhetoric, we often think about these guys, right? The ancient Greeks and the sophists. Or we might be thinking about these guys, the ancient Roman philosophers. Now, one of these ancient Roman philosophers is quite key to the development of rhetoric and the teaching of rhetoric in the Western world. And it's this person here. His name is Cicero. And Cicero came up with 5 canons of rhetoric, which I think very nicely sums up the Western world's take, the Western world's point of view of what rhetoric should be about. And here are the 5 canons. We've got 1, invention. So what is the topic? What, inventing, creating content for your speech or for your persuasive speech. Then it's arrangement. How are you organizing it? What's in your introduction paragraph? What's in your conclusion? Then it's the style you're using. What kind of idiomatic expressions are you using? Are you pausing in the right moments? Are you using the right intonation? Then it's about committing the speech to memory and then how you are delivering it. So these are your Western canons of rhetoric. Now, why do I say Western? So when I was doing my research for this talk, I became extremely excited when I found out that rhetoric did not get talked about only in the Western world. In fact, these guys here, the ancient Egyptians, talked about rhetoric way back in 2200 to 1500 BC. There were scriptures found that showed proof that rhetoric was highly valued in ancient Egypt. They held eloquent speaking in high esteem, and they used to train young men in the art of rhetoric so that they could become scribes and officials. Now, this is where there is some difference between the way the ancient Greeks and Romans taught rhetoric and talked about rhetoric, the Western world, and the way the ancient Egyptians talked about rhetoric. They talked a lot about that balance between eloquence and wise silence. Now, notice in Cicero's 5 canons of rhetoric and in Aristotle's and in the Greek philosophers, no one talked about silence. So I found this incredible article about rhetoric in ancient Egypt, and it broke down the teachings of rhetoric into these 5 canons. 1, silence, knowing when to speak and when not to speak, right? Which ties in with timing. Restraint. How often do you hear something and then you get emotional about it? You have an emotional reaction and then you respond or you react without thinking. Being able to restrain yourself and think about things logically and not just respond emotionally. And I suppose that ties back into those adverts that you just saw. When you watch an advertising message, a persuasive message, training our students to hold back those emotions and think about it logically, unpack it logically. Am I being manipulated? Am I reacting emotionally? And then we have fluency and truthfulness, which a few of you mentioned. Good speakers have the ability to at least to seem honest and truthful and true to themselves, authentic, right? So knowing when not to speak is essential. And it is also very respected rhetorical knowledge. Now, I looked at more recent research from Oakwood and found this. These from the research done are the top factors of influencing. Now, when we talk about top factors of top skills of an influencer, top skills of a persuasive person, we always think about charisma and charm and the way they speak and how well they speak, the use of language, idioms, style, etc., intonation. What really surprised me about this pie chart is that 20% of this pie chart says attending. In fact, the largest, most important skill of a persuasive person is the ability to listen, the ability to attend to their conversation partner, to ask the right questions, to allow silence when silence is needed, and to really be there, not holding a mobile phone while listening, not, thinking about your response while listening, but to genuinely listen. And that is one of the key skills of a persuasive, good rhetorician. How fascinating. Now, if you study negotiation and influencing, you know that there are one way of looking at it, one framework is to look at push influencing and pull influencing. Push influencers try to push their opinions onto you. They try to say, this is what I believe in. You should believe in this too, because here are the advantages, here are the disadvantages. Bang, this is in your face. This is known as push influencing. Pull influencing, however, it's more about trying to engage the listener, to ask the right questions, so that the listener comes to those conclusions by themselves, to pull them in and get that commitment from them in order for them to buy in to the opinion or the product that you're trying to sell. Now, I thought this orange quarrel gave a great example of pull influencing in a way. I'm not sure if you heard about the orange quarrel, but here's the situation, right? You've got a little boy and a little girl, and they're arguing over an orange. Now, let's do this as a role play in the classroom, okay? In pairs, student A, you're the boy, student B, you're the girl. You have an orange and you both want it. You have 3 minutes. Go figure out how you're going to do this. How are you going to come to a conclusion? So since we can't do this in pairs, how about we use the chat field? Some ideas of what you might say to your partner if you were doing this role play. How would you try and get that orange? What would you say to them? Okay, Rebecca, very diplomatic. Can we cut it in two? You have half, I have half. I like that, Fabio. I haven't been eating for days and I need to survive. I need vitamin C or I will die. So again, inducing that pathos, that emotion in our conversation partner, right? Feel sorry for me. I'm dying. Yes. Offer them something. I like that sort of bit of logos going on there. Okay, I'll give you something if you let me have that orange. Okay, ladies first, are very gentlemanly. It's rotten. Oh, I like that, Natalia. It's rotten. Don't touch it. It's mine. Oh, Palito, absolutely a business person there. Can we discuss our terms, please? Yes, playing the victim, a lot of that going on in the chat field. Make the juice and share. Wonderful, lots of great strategies. And I've done this with 8-year-olds and I've found that they've come up with some very interesting strategies too, not unlike what you've suggested. These kids come up with some really good strategies of getting that orange. Now, William Ury, in one of his talks, showed us with the Harvard negotiation technique that he created how we can possibly resolve this orange quarrel in a much more effective way. Let's have a look at this video.
I'd like to retell a familiar tale called The Orange Quarrel to illustrate what we mean by beyond win-win. This story is adapted from Getting to Yes by Fisher and Ury at Harvard University. It was a rather explosive situation because two children were using adversarial methods that ignore the interests of the other party. Both children wanted the only orange, and they were heading for a lose-lose situation, destroyed orange, or at best, win-lose if one child overpowered the other for the whole orange. Fortunately, a clever mediator came along with a good idea. Jenny cut, Joey choose. This was a good solution and a win-win solution compared to what could have happened in an all-out fight. All things being equal, this seemed like a pretty fair solution. Both children got 50% of what they wanted. But it turns out that we can do even better than this when we recognize that there are two important objectives that help us achieve superior agreements: fairness and efficiency. Divide the benefits fairly and don't leave value on the table. The children in this conflict were using adversarial methods, assuming a one-dimensional model of negotiations. Both children wanted the whole orange, and the problem was that if one was to get more, the other had to get less. The first step in solving this problem is to relabel these scales. Instead of thinking that each child wants 100% of the orange, consider rather that each child wants to become 100% satisfied. Now we can take these scales and reorient them so that we're viewing the case in multidimensional satisfaction space. Now it's no longer necessarily true that one party has to lose when another one gains. Recall the solution in our previous scenario. We did achieve our fairness objective. Both parties got 50% of what they wanted, but when we plot this solution on the graph, we see that there may be room for improvement. To further explore this, we dig a little deeper into our bag of interest-based principles and ask each child why they want the orange. It turns out that Jenny isn't interested in eating the orange. She wants to bake a cake that calls for the peels of exactly one orange. Joey, on the other hand, can never get enough oranges to eat, but always throws the peels into the waste bin. So now you know the optimal solution. Give Jenny all the peels and Joey all the fruit. They both get 100% of what they wanted, which achieves our efficiency objective.
Who would have thought that the best way of influencing someone is to get to know your partner, to ask questions and find out what they are interested in? Because without understanding context, without understanding your partner, you can never truly be persuasive. Communication is at the core of everything we do. It is at the core of us teaching English to our students, but it is at the core of society. It is at the core of politics. And we can help students develop better communication skills, not just better grammar, better vocabulary, but better communication skills. And part of this is not just about style, but it is also about substance. It is also about the use of language to communicate effectively. It's about critical thinking, listening attentively, knowing when to speak and when not to speak, and when to share your point of view. Being aware of your own emotional reactions and managing them, not emotionally reacting and then regretting having reacted. And, like the Egyptians would say, silence, knowing when to speak, and asking the right questions, as we saw in the Orange Quarrel. I hope you've enjoyed this session. Thank you for listening, and I will be happy to take any questions.
Hi, Chia.
Hello,
Can you
hi,
hear me?
Will.
Hi, thank you so much. What a talk.
Thank
Absolutely
you for
amazing.
having me.
I love the end. I just love that video, the of the orange and the disagreement and how to solve it. It was just so poignant, and it just delivers the message that you're trying to send so vividly, doesn't it?
Yes, so it's very much based on the Harvard negotiation technique, which is also called beyond win-win. So we often talk about compromising, but what they're saying is compromising is not enough, because compromising often results in both parties being only half satisfied or partially satisfied. And it's about, getting everyone satisfied, 100% satisfied. And the only way to do that is getting to know and making that human connection with your conversation partner. As Stephen Covey once said, trust is the glue of life and is the foundation. Trust is the foundation of everything we do. And so surely being a good rhetorician, being a good communicator involves making that human connection with our partners and building relationships, building trust, and listening, really listening to them.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Chia. I think we're gonna move on, if that's okay. That's William Ury. I'm just going to put it in there. I think I spelled it wrong. William U-R-Y, right? Is that right?
Yes, William Ury. So Ury and Fisher, who wrote the book Getting to Yes. William Ury also has 2 wonderful TED Talks to watch. And you can find the Orange Quarrel on YouTube. Just search Orange Quarrel.
Thank you so much, Chia. Amazing. All right. Well, time for you to have a break, I think. Yes, again. Thanks again, Chia. Have a nice day. See you. Okay, so I've got a little bit to share with you. So I'm going to dangle the carrot, I think. David and Ben are in the wings. They are waiting to walk onto stage. But before they do, I've got a little thing I'd like to share with you. If it's going to work for me, come on, you can do it. You can do it, Zoom. There we go. I think you can see that. I'm going to assume that you can see that just fine. So you might be aware that Macmillan Education, Macmillan has been around for a long time. I think it's fair to say it's quite a long time. It was around before I was born, before Chia was born, before Ben and David was born, even before Daria was born. It's been around for a very long time. It's been around for 180 years, actually. 180 years. And those 180 years form the basis of the talk that you're about to see with David and Ben Crystal. So I'm not going to talk too much about what happened, but I would like to say a couple of bits. Firstly, I would like to let you know that there's a couple of places on the website where you can explore that history a bit more if you're so inclined. So if you go onto our website, it will show you this magnificent timeline of the history of Macmillan, when right at the beginning, Daniel and Alexander Macmillan founded their publishing company in 1983. They created a place that would recognize and value contemporary writing. And then they soon became the force for change and progress. That was what they were known for at the beginning. And we very much hope that's what we're still known for today. So they published works like Alice in Wonderland, which was, of course, very risky at the time. It was an abstract book and not one that was guaranteed at all to be a success. And then they founded Nature, the first, and up to this day, Nature is the most prestigious scientific journal. As you might know, we are still part of Springer Nature. 180 years later, we're building on the Macmillan brothers' commitment to learning and innovation and celebrating the progress that's been made in education thanks to their vision. Education continues to evolve as a result of the seed planted by those two 180 years ago. So, a little bit has happened this year, and we wanted to share with you a little bit to celebrate what has happened. So firstly, here's a little card, if you would like. To sign this, I'll be putting if you can see that. Can you see that and hear that, everybody? I hope so. I can't see the chat. It's not coming up. You can. So our birthday's been celebrated all around the world. If you want to sign the card, I'll put up a QR code in a minute just to say thanks. If you want to say thank you for anything, I know it's a bit of a strange way of doing it. Please say thank you to us. It's a bit of a strange thing to do on your birthday. But what else do you do in these situations? So there's a place to say thanks if you'd like to. This is when Google and Zoom have a little bit of a disagreement and they don't like each other very much. There we go. So if you want to sign that, please do. Go to our anniversary website. There's a QR code to see the timeline and to sign the card if you'd like. But before we move on, there's a video that we've made this year. Everyone in Macmillan has been involved in this project. It's part of a sort of celebration of our birthday. And we've called it 180 Days of Giving Back. So 180 Days of Giving Back was an amazing initiative designed to bring all Macmillan education teams globally together while supporting a local project, charitable projects that matter to those particular teams. We've got teams all over the world, and they have contributed to the world and to their local communities via this 180 Days of Giving Back. And we put together this little celebration of what people have done around the world, and very excited to share it to you here. So sit back, relax. Here's a little look back at what the teams around the world have done for their local projects, local communities.
Hi, Will. There's a problem with the sound. We can't hear it.
Excellent. It's all part of the plan, everyone.
Okay.
Of course, it's not part of the plan. That is not part of the plan, but I'm going to pretend it is just for a few seconds so that people just have a little giggle.
That's fine.
It's
all part of the birthday celebration.
That's the whole point. That's what happens.
Maybe stop sharing and then share again.
All part of the plan.
Yeah, and click those buttons. I don't know what for the audio.
Yeah.
Share video.
Sorry about this, everyone. I won't go back to the beginning. I'll just carry on playing it from there we go.
Yay.
Paraisópolis, we give full scholarship for 1,200 students from the community. We offer to the people here, to people in vulnerability, the opportunity to achieve more than they believe they can. So they start to believe that they can do things because they have access to high quality course, high quality material. That is something that they wouldn't be able to achieve, to access if it was not this project, the Inglesa project, and Macmillan. So I'd like to say thank you very much to Macmillan for this donation. It's really very helpful.
In Macmillan, Iberia, we've been collaborating with the Valia Foundation. It's a local charity based in Spain that works with underprivileged children who are at risk of social exclusion.
We decided to take Kiva, which is part of our services portfolio, to Valia. It's an anti-bullying program that we promote here in Spain.
We carried out Kiva lessons that normally the school teachers that use the Kiva program would carry out in their schools. We did it with 9 to 10-year-olds.
Fundación Vivo Fácil is a charity which aims to improve the quality of life of people and to reduce inequalities within society. One of their projects prepares adults with disabilities to be able to find decent employment, and that's where Macmillan Education comes in. Over the past 2 years, volunteers from our company have been able to work together with the charity to provide 2 English courses for up to 10 adults in each course.
It was a fantastic experience, I think, for us and for the teachers, because we got to be teachers again, and we don't often get that opportunity, so it was really good to feel that. And for the students, I think that they really enjoyed having different teachers with different accents who brought different ideas to the classroom, and they were really conscientious students, so we appreciated that.
Pretty cool, huh? Pretty cool, I think. Zoom and Google are not friends. I'm just going to say that. I'm going to put that out there. Zoom and Google aren't friends with each other. They don't work well. Anyway, I hope you like that video. That's huge amount of effort and time and love and passion has been put into a lot of the all of the initiatives that have gone around, that gone out by the Macmillan teams around the world. So I hope you enjoyed that. Please don't congratulate me. That's absolutely not me at all. I'm just showing you the video of what everyone else has done. So thank you so much to everybody for doing it. Right, so I think it's about time, isn't it? Shall we invite on David and Ben? What do we think? David and Ben? I think it's a good idea. Let's go for it. David and Ben, are you around by any chance?
Hey.
Hello.
Hey, everybody. Will, I don't think they were congratulating you for the for Macmillan's work. I think they were congratulating you for navigating Zoom and Google.
Oh, right. Well, yeah, that does definitely deserve a congratulations.
That deserves a medal.
I need to go on stage and accept something for being able to do that.
Well, you're on a virtual stage. I wish I could pass you something, but wasn't that a great talk from Chia, though? My goodness.
I know. What a talk. I love the way she does things, and I love that I think the way that she does things complements the way that you two do things. They're 2 really different talks in the best possible way.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. And it's wonderful to see so many people from so many different parts of the world out there. Nice to see you. Greetings from Switzerland. Greetings back to Switzerland. Hey,
yeah, everybody. Switzerland. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. Let's see.
I was in Warsaw last week. Hey, Anna. Greetings from Uruguay, Bulgaria. Fantastic. Go on. Sorry, Will. It's your show. I'm just
Keep saying hi, Ben. I'm not going to interrupt that. It's gold.
Georgia, Vietnam, Turkey, Mexico, Finland, Jordan. David is a legend. Where's that? Czech Republic, Romania.
Notice that. It's David that's the legend.
I've got some years to go before I become legendary, I think.
Well, we actually were talking, David, you had your lifetime achievement at the Eltons some time ago. Might even say a lifetime ago, so you might be due another legend award.
Or leg end.
Yeah, another leg. Yes. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to take too much time here, but I just wanted to say that these two are absolutely superb people to work with and to watch at their craft. And this talk, we saw it earlier, really is just an epitome of what these two are capable of doing. But they are more than the sum of their than their individual parts. I think this talk really does. It's amazing, and I hope you love it. David is a prolific author. He has been for his entire life. I think he's probably written a couple of books today, just in between the two sessions. And Ben Crystal is an outstanding performer. A lot of his performance is Shakespeare, but he goes outside of that, of course, and an author and a trainer and all sorts of things. And before I leave, I've got to show you this. This is their latest book, Everyday Shakespeare, Lines for Life. It covers every day of the year. Am I right, David and Ben? This is every day of the year.
True. Well, we've got
Shakespeare.
A very kind comment from Germany here. Your Everyday Shakespeare is a treasure chest. Well, thank you very much for saying that. Yeah, this is a book, our fifth book together, is a page for every day of the year, every calendar day of the year, including the leap day, and a quote from Shakespeare to reflect on or to resonate with or to even pop into your everyday conversation or even your everyday classroom on every page.
So that means there's how many of them?
There are 366 lead quotes for
so it's a leap year.
But we include the leap year for when there is a February 29. But we've also added in some quotes that we thought resonated or juxtaposed some of the lead quotes. So there's actually 1,000 quotes from Shakespeare in there, but they're not a horse, my kingdom for a horse, or to be or not to be. They're lines that we feel will that you might be familiar to your everyday life. We'll talk about some of them later, but that QR code will take you to it.
Amazing. Thanks for saying so, Ben. The floor is yours. Have a great session. See you later.
Oh, cheers, Will. Thanks so much.
And I suppose we should tell people where we are.
Yeah, that's true.
We're talking to you from, my home actually in North Wales, in Holyhead, and Ben lives not so far away down the road, the other side of Anglesey, the island. And it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon here, whatever time you guys have out there.
Oh, hello back to Lebanon and many greetings back to Poland. I was just in Warsaw this last weekend at the university giving a talk, and it was very lovely and snowy and twinkly, and good to be back in Poland. No snow here in Wales.
No, not yet. And yes, with this talk today about Macmillan's 180th, one of the biggest tasks in learning English, we think, is keeping up to date with the changes that are taking place in the language. I mean, there aren't so many changes in grammar or pronunciation, as they both change rather slowly. But vocabulary, of course, as you all know out there, can change very quickly indeed.
How many new words come into the English language every year, Doug?
Well, about 1,000, more or less. An awful lot of them, of course, are technical terms that most learners wouldn't need to encounter, words from biology or zoology and things like that.
1,000
or so, yeah.
Many of them stay in the language?
2 or 3 every day, that means in effect, doesn't it? Yeah. Do many of them stay? No, actually, not at all. About 3/4 of them will disappear or become outdated, Times change, culture changes, things people talk about change, they'll go. But 1/4 of them remain. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is that while they're being used, they pose a problem for learners.
Right, especially young learners of English. You might see or hear these new words on the internet, but not find them in the dictionary because they're too new.
Yeah, that's right. So the question is, how can they be helped?
Teachers tell us that it helps students of English to know about the background for a new usage, the context, who used it and why. Context, of course, adds interest, and most importantly, it helps words stick in the memory.
And not just for the language side of learning, it's also very useful for students of English literature, as actually so many of the new words that come into everyday use start out in the writing of famous authors.
It's amazing. It's really amazing to see how original authors are when we recognize how inventive they've been with words.
So that was the idea behind the talk we're doing for you today. We thought we'd use Macmillan's anniversary to look at the way some new words have come into English over the past 180 years, using the books that Will was telling you about a few minutes ago, using the books that they published.
And over the course of the talk, if you've got a question for us at the end, then don't drop it into the chat box because we'll never find the questions, but put it into the actual Q&A box. Now, there were so many influential books from both literature and language in Macmillan's list.
Oh, yes. I noticed when I went through the list the other day, I noticed two in particular. For literature, in 1861, there was a book called The Golden Treasury, edited by Francis Turner Palgrave. It's one of the most successful anthologies in English literary history, fitted neatly into a jacket pocket. I mean, I had this in school. We looked at The Golden Treasury all the time. Did you have that?
In my school, we didn't have books in my school.
Yes, you did.
But what about, that was literature. What about for language then?
Well, I think it has to be the 1898 publication of a book called A Manual of English Grammar by a man called J.C. Nesfield. He was a very prescriptive grammarian, not very much in tune with what we talk about today, but it was one of the most successful grammar books of its time, both in the UK and abroad. Still going strong in 1964 in a 4th edition. I wish my books lasted that long.
Well, goodness. And may yet. Now, when you look through the list of authors that Macmillan has published, virtually all the famous writers of the 19th century are there. So for the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to select some writers from that list and show you some different kinds of word creation.
Yes, that's the idea. Let's begin. Who should
some
we begin?
Neologisming.
Very good, Ben.
Thank you. That's a new word.
Yeah, and it's got a lot of syllables in it.
It has, hasn't it?
So let's begin. We're going to begin with Lewis Carroll. I mean, Will has mentioned the first publication of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland in 1865, and then the follow-up book, Through the Looking Glass.
Both stories, of course, made famous by the Disney film and more recently the Tim Burton adaptation. But what's so special linguistically or English languagey about Lewis Carroll?
Well, he does something very surprising. He shows how even completely made up, invented words can catch the public imagination and enter the language.
Making up new words. It's the sort of thing kids love to do, adults too.
Yeah.
We've chosen an example from the first chapter of Through the Looking Glass.
Yeah, it's if you've read the book, you might remember. Alice finds herself in the world where the chess pieces are alive, and she sees a book with a very strange poem in it. Now, if you don't know the poem, don't try to understand the unusual words, as they're all invented. Instead, listen to how they sound and think of the images they conjure up in your mind. Anyway, the poem's called Jabberwocky.
'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy with the borogroves and the mome raths outgrabe. Beware the Jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the Jubjub bird, and shun the frumious Bandersnatch. He took his vorpal sword in hand. Long time the manxome foe he sought. So rested he by the tum-tum tree, and stood awhile in thought. And as in uffish thought he stood, the Jabberwock, with eyes of flame, came whiffling through the tulgey wood, and burbled as it came. 1, 2, 1, to and through the vorpal blade went snicker-snack. He left it dead, and with its head he went galumphing back. And hast thou slain the Jabberwock? Come to my arms, my beamish boy. Oh, frabjuste, callooh, callay, he chortled in his joy. 'Twas brillig, and a slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the momraths outgrabe.
Yeah, well done, Ben. Yes, he repeats that first verse at the end, doesn't he? The slithy toves are happy now that the Jabberwock has been killed, you see. But let's talk about the strange language in there. The title first, Jabberwock. Jabberwock means a nonsensical expression, and you'll find it in the dictionary these days. Well, the words may be nonsense, but they do actually convey a sort of sense. I mean, take slithy, for instance. What does that conjure up for you, Ben?
Slithy, goodness. Well, it's like slimy, and lithe, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. A combination of slimy and lithe, exactly. Creations like this are called blends, as they take the first part of one word, slide it, and join it or blend it to the last part of another, the ithe bit. So slithy. And there was another one, I love this one, galumphing.
Galumphing.
Yeah,
Well,
what's that one?
That's got to be something to do with like galloping and triumphant, I suppose. After all, they've just killed the Jabberwock.
Yeah, exactly. Galumphing. Yeah, it's a great word, great word. And some of the words have become part of the standard language. I mean, chortle, for instance.
Oh,
He
yeah.
chortled in his joy.
And frabjous is another, which sounds like a combination of fair and joyous, I suppose.
Exactly. And all these words are in dictionaries now. So making up words is great fun, and it's a good way to get the kids in the classrooms or the adults in the classrooms to become more confident in playing with the language. You can try a nonsense game.
All right, well, let's try it now.
Oh, all right. Okay, let's look. The weather's improved today, this afternoon here in Wales. Let's invent a new adjective by blending. Choose two adjectives to do with the weather.
All right. Well, it's usually raining in Wales, and there's quite a wind too because we're on an island here. So, what about rainy and breezy?
Rainy and breezy. Well, that could make rainsy.
Rainsy, yeah.
Rainsy. It's very rainsy outside today.
And if the weather got worse, we'd have the rapper Stormzy. Then I suppose.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
rainsy is a day that's both rainy and breezy.
Indeed, indeed it
Great.
is.
All right. Well, who is next in our Macmillan's author list?
Yes, well, we've got Rudyard Kipling. Macmillan also published Rudyard Kipling.
Oh, best known for The Jungle Book.
Yes, that was published in 1894. But the point is, Kipling wrote a large number of essays and short stories, and he created new words in many of them. So I want you to listen to this next piece. See if you can spot three of these new words. And here's a clue. They're all compound words.
You mean words that are consisting of two elements like
Yeah.
ice cream or part-time, and they're usually linked by a hyphen.
Yeah, exactly. And one of them I think you're going to find is really surprising. You won't expect it to be a new word by Kipling. Anyway, the extract is from a short story in his collection called Limits and Renewals. What he does is he creates a character called John Marden, who's had some alcoholic drinks and has then hallucinations. So notice the compound words, and if you spot them, put them in the chat box.
A fear leaped out of the goose-fleshed streets of London between the icy shop fronts and drove John to his flat. He argued that it must have been a chill, and fortified himself against it so resolutely that an advertisement, which had caught the tail end of his eye, stood up before him in the shape of a full-sized red and white bullock dancing in a teacup. It was succeeded a few days later by a small dog pressed against the skirting board of his room, an inky, fat horror with a pink tongue, crouched in the attitude of a little beast he had often watched at Mr. Williams's fashionable West End pet shop. where dogs lived in excelsior-floored cubicles, appealing to the passers-by. It began as a spreading blur, which morning after morning became more definite. It was better than the ox in the teacup, till it was borne in on John Martin one dawn that if it crawled out into the centre of the room, the universe would crash down on him.
Oh, yes, poor John Martin, indeed. But Kipling just loves compound words, doesn't he? There were no less than 10 just in that short extract. And I was looking at the chat coming down, and I think around the world you've spotted pretty well all of them.
Tea-shop, goose-fleshed, West End,
all
Excelsior floored. Well done.
Well done, yeah. And now, point is, 3 of those were being used for the first time in British English. And did you spot them? I think you did, many of you. First one, the very first sentence.
A fear leaped out of the goose-fleshed streets of London.
Yes, goose-fleshed. Nobody had used that word before, as far as we know, you know. He took the word goose-flesh. Goose-flesh had been used earlier in the century.
Meaning a rough, pimply condition of the skin, right? Like a goose, like a, what do they call it? Goose skin, chicken skin sort of thing.
Yeah, that's right. And he turned it into an adjective. Goose-flesh, goose-fleshed. And then he took the word floor and he added a trade name to it. Excelsior, some of you have spotted that. It was a local trade name in Victorian times, used for a type of thin wood shavings that you sprinkle onto floorboards, you know, to keep the moisture under control. And he gave us Excelsior floored.
So what was the surprising compound word?
Ah, well, where did John Marden often watch the animals?
In Mr. Williams's fashionable West End pet shop.
Pet shop, indeed. That's the first time we see pet shop written down in this country. I mean, it's a really common word now, and one doesn't realise that it was invented really just over, well, 100 and whatever it is years ago.
Yes, exactly, mate. Goose-fleshed, goosebumps, exactly the same. Yeah, splendiferous. So who's in our next list of books that Macmillan has published?
Well, Charles Dickens now. Had to put him in. He's the most prolific of all the novelists of his century and a great word creator. His works are all terrific, so this is a difficult choice, but this next extract has one particular feature which we'll talk about after Ben's read the piece out.
Now, this is from chapter 30 of the Pickwick Papers. There's a character in it called Nathaniel Winkle, who fancies himself as something of an outdoor sportsman.
Yeah, and the running joke in the novel, you see, is that he isn't very good at any of these outdoor sports at all. Oh, and the other thing you need to know, he's in love with Arabella Allen, so he wants to show off to her, you see.
Now, said Wardle, after a substantial lunch with the agreeable items of strong beer and cherry brandy had been done ample justice to, what say you to an hour on the ice? We shall have plenty of time. You skate, of course, Winkle, said Wardle. Yes, oh yes, replied Mr. Winkle. I am rather out of practice. Oh, do skate, Mr. Winkle, said Arabella. I like to see it so much. It is so graceful, said another young lady. A third young lady said it was elegant, and a fourth expressed her opinion that it was swan-like.
I think I should chip in here. Note the phrase swan-like. Nothing new there. That word had been in the language since the 16th century. But listen to what happens when Mr. Winkle puts his skates on.
Now then, sir, said Sam in an encouraging tone, off with you and show 'em how to do it. Stop, Sam, stop, said Mr. Winkle, trembling violently and clutching hold of Sam's arm with the grasp of a drowning man. How slippery it is, Sam. Not an uncommon thing upon ice, sir, replied Mr. Weller. Hold up, sir. This last observation of Mr. Weller's bore reference to a demonstration Mr. Winkle made at the instant of a frantic desire to throw his feet in the air and dash the back of his head on the ice. These are very awkward skates, aren't they, Sam? Inquired Mr. Winkle, staggering. I'm afeard there's an awkward gentleman in 'em, sir, replied Sam. Just hold me at first, Sam, will you? Said Mr. Winkle. There, that's right. I shall soon get in the way of it, Sam. Not too fast, Sam, not too fast. Mr. Winkle, stooping forward with his body half doubled up, was being assisted over the ice by Mr. Weller in a very singular and unswan-like manner, when Mr. Pickwick most innocently shouted from the opposite bank, "Sam, sir, here, I want you." "Let go, sir," said Sam. "Don't you hear the governor a-calling? Let go, sir." With a violent effort, Mr. Weller disengaged him from the grasp of the agonized Pickwickian, and in so doing, administered a considerable impetus to the unhappy Mr. Winkle. With an accuracy which no degree of dexterity or practice could have ensured, that unfortunate gentleman bore swiftly down into the centre of the reel at the very moment when Mr. Bob Sawyer was performing a flourish of unparalleled beauty. Mr. Winkle struck wildly against him, and with a loud crash, they both fell heavily down. Mr. Pickwick ran to the spot. Bob Sawyer had risen to his feet, but Mr. Winkle was far too wise to do anything of the kind in skates. He was seated on the ice, making spasmodic efforts to smile, but anguish was depicted on every lineament of his countenance.
Oh, Mr. Winkle, yes. It's a great passage by Dickens, I think. But did you notice the new word he created? Here it is again.
Mr. Winkle was being assisted over the ice by Mr. Weller in a very singular and unswan-like manner.
There it is, unswan-like. This is one of the favourite ways of making new words in English. You remember, we had swan-like before. Now he's added a prefix to it. And is especially popular in English.
Dickens actually coined 17 words beginning with like unassertive, undiscussable, undistinctive, unyielding.
And Lewis Carroll did it as well. Everybody did it, actually, but listen to this one, this conversation, when Alice meets the enormous humanoid egg, Humpty Dumpty.
"What a beautiful belt you've got on," Alice suddenly remarked. At least, she corrected herself on second thoughts. "A beautiful cravat? I should have said, no, a belt. I beg your pardon," she added in dismay, for Humpty Dumpty looked thoroughly offended, and she began to wish she hadn't chosen that subject. If I only knew, she thought to herself, which was neck and which was waist. Evidently, Humpty Dumpty was very angry, though he said nothing for a minute or two. When he did speak again, it was in a deep growl. "It is a most provoking thing," he said at last, "when a person doesn't know a cravat from a belt." "I know it's very ignorant of me," Alice said, in so humble a tone that Humpty Dumpty relented. "It's a cravat, child, and a beautiful one, as you say. It's a present from the White King and Queen. There now." "Is it really?" said Alice, quite pleased to find that she had chosen a good subject after all. "They gave it me," Humpty Dumpty continued thoughtfully, as he crossed one knee over the other and clasped his hands round it. "They gave it me for an unbirthday present." "I beg your pardon," Alice said with a puzzled air. "I'm not offended," said Humpty Dumpty. "I mean, what is an unbirthday present?" "A present given when it isn't your birthday, of course." Alice considered a little. "I like birthday presents best," she said at last. "You don't know what you're talking about," cried Humpty Dumpty. "How many days are there in a year?" 365, said Alice. "How many birthdays have you?" 1. "And if you take 1 from 365, what remains?" 364, of course. "So there are 364 days when you might get unbirthday presents." "Certainly," said Alice. "And only 1 For birthday presents, you know, there's glory for you.
Indeed it is, yes. Unbirthday, unbirthday, a great coinage. Oh, indeed. So, unwords turn out to be one of the most important ways of creating new words. And you'll find them right from Old English, Anglo-Saxon times, 1,000 years ago, right down to today.
Yeah, we're still doing it. Even modern internet users are doing it. You have a friend on social media that you don't want to message anymore. You can unfriend or unfollow them.
I don't have any unfriends or friends anymore.
Oh, yeah, but
it's sad, isn't it?
you could set up an Instagram. You could set up a TikTok account.
Listen, I have never ticked or talked, I have to say.
That's true.
Yeah.
We need to wind you up some more.
Yes. Anyway, it's one of Shakespeare's favourite methods. You mustn't forget Shakespeare. Mustn't forget Shakespeare, because Macmillan, I nearly said Macbeth, oh God, published a one-volume edition of his works in 1864 called the Globe Edition. Hugely successful. Stayed in print for more than a century.
Someone said in the chat, so un-TikTokish of you, Dad.
Absolutely. Well done, whoever that was.
So yes, Shakespeare, who loved to create and use words beginning with un, amongst other things. Here are 7 in one sentence. It's from a pedantic school teacher. Now, a pedantic school teacher. Who could we get to read the words of a pedantic school teacher? Dad, would you mind reading a pedantic school teacher?
All right.
That would be great. Holofernes, the pedantic school teacher in Love's Labour's Lost, who's complaining about the way Constable Dull has misunderstood Latin. Now, Holofernes, the teacher, describes Constable Dull's manner as
an undressed, unpolished, uneducated, unpruned, untrained, or rather unlettered, or rather unconfirmed fashion. That was pedantry, wasn't it?
It was very good. It was very good.
Yeah.
Very, very
Anyway,
pedantry.
there are actually 314 instances in the big Oxford English Dictionary. Excuse me, Will, I have to mention Oxford here, where Shakespeare is the first citation for an un-usage. Most of them are adjectives, you know, uncomfortable, uncompassionate, unearthly, uneducated, all Shakespeare's. But there are many instances where the prefix has been added to an already existing verb. And these are the really interesting ones because some of them are so vividly dramatic.
Here's one from towards the end of Coriolanus. Now, Coriolanus, imagine the scene. The Roman senators are calling everyone to welcome back to Rome Coriolanus's mother Volumnia and her companions. Now, Coriolanus, who's called Marcius in the beginning of the play and in this quotation, was just about to attack Rome, and his mother and her ladies succeed in persuading him not to attack Rome, of course, much to the delight of the citizens. And this is what a senator says: "Behold, our patroness," Coriolanus's mother, "the life of Rome. Call all your tribes together, praise the gods, and make triumphant fires, strew flowers before them. Unshout the noise that banished Marcius, repeal him with the welcome of his mother. Cry, welcome, ladies,
welcome." Yes, and so they do, shouting welcome together. But notice the unusual nature of the word unshout.
Ah, yes, unshout the noise that banished Marcius.
I mean, you can't actually unshout, can you? I mean, you've shouted, that's it. But there are several other verbs like it in Shakespeare. From speak, he makes unspeak. From swear, he makes unswear. From curse, he makes uncurse. And there are many more. So, what does Shakespeare's use of un teach us? Well, I think it's an exercise in being daring. And first language speakers are being daring all the time. So why not second language speakers too? I mean, here are some of the recent creations that you will find in dictionaries these days. Yeah, Ben, cool.
Uncool.
Yeah. Funny.
Unfunny.
Sorry.
Unsorry.
Let's look at one in a bit more detail. Young.
Unyoung, then.
Unyoung. An excellent example. You see, we already have young and old as opposites. Why should we need something else? because it adds an additional nuance of meaning. I mean, I do not feel old, for instance, but I am definitely unyoung.
Yeah, yeah, not young doesn't mean old. It's the lowest point on a scale of youngness, but it hasn't entered into the scale of oldness yet. That's why it appeals to you, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly so. Now, learners must be prepared to encounter these words in the drama of everyday conversation because, as I say, native speakers use this sort of thing all the time. And what Shakespeare teaches us is not to be scared of them and not to be scared to use them yourselves if you get the chance. I mean, be daring. Try it out.
Unmute yourselves.
Unmute. Oh,
someone said that in the chat.
Yeah, well done.
So yeah, Shakespeare influenced the language in so many ways, and there are also, of course, dozens of idioms he created that we use every day that have come into the English language without us realizing that they were originally his. For example, as good luck would have it.
Oh yeah, from the Merry Wives of Windsor.
You might laugh yourself into stitches.
Yeah, that's right. That's from Twelfth Night.
You could be a tower of strength to someone.
Tower of Strength from Richard III.
And this everyday nature of Shakespeare's language is something that Dad and I are especially interested in at the moment, as Will mentioned at the beginning.
Yeah, that's right. That new book that you saw at the beginning called Everyday Shakespeare, Lines for Life. And it features the lesser known quotes that you use to talk about your daily life, not the sort of really famous quotes that perhaps have nothing particularly to do with you, like, you know, a horse, my kingdom for a horse. You know, I mean, there might be some of you out there that need to know about a horse, but most people don't. So.
Right. We've got this one from Hamlet. We haven't picked to be or not to be. That's not very everyday. But imagine you're doing something difficult in your life, something that you don't want to be doing, like maybe the washing up or washing the car, and then someone comes along to help you. Then you can say, for this relief, much thanks.
Yes, a number of times I've said that. And instead of wishing somebody good night with a simple, sleep well, why not this one from Julius Caesar?
Enjoy the honey-heavy dew of slumber.
Yeah, I think I could go to sleep after that. Yeah. I must go to sleep now. No, we've chosen one quote for every day of the year. One per page, added some commentary and some background. So we're in the month of December when people are often celebrating, and today is the 12th of December, so we've chosen this quote for December the 12th.
I had rather fast from all 4 days than drink so much in one. Now that's Cassio in Othello, who is hungover. He's drunk far too much.
Yeah, fast means take a break from eating or drinking something. It's the sort of line you could say, like Cassio, when you've been celebrating a bit too much.
Oh, I'd rather fast from all 4 days than drink so much in one.
Ooh, yes.
Well, how about this?
Yeah, I mean, this line is the sort of thing you could say when you've got something very important to do tomorrow.
Yes, or if one of your students has an exam coming up, you might just say, get a good night's sleep, you'll need the rest tomorrow.
Yeah, but listen to the lovely poetic way that Shakespeare says it. Oh, and watch out for the word speeding, which here means success.
Each one betake him to his rest, tomorrow all for speeding. Do their best.
Absolutely. Take yourself to your rest, Benjamin.
Oh.
Tomorrow you can have
great success.
Great success.
Yeah.
Yes, our book is full of great lines like that. Lines most people, I think, have never read or heard, actually.
And we've been hearing from teachers that have used the book every day at the beginning of each class, using the day's quote as a great way to kick the class off and offer a conversation point for the students to talk about between themselves. So often young students, older people too, are put off by Shakespeare because they think he's too difficult. And hopefully these lines...
Well, when you read these everyday lines, it's much clearer that a great deal of what Shakespeare puts into the mouths of his characters is not at all difficult to understand. You didn't have any difficulty with the ones we just had a few seconds ago. So, well, look, time's passing. Let's end with one more.
Right before time for some questions. We are leaving you, so how can we wish you well? We could just say goodbye. by, but that's not very exciting. It's a bit abrupt, and it's certainly not very poetic or Shakespearean. So how about this one from A Midsummer Night's Dream?
Ah, yes. Joy, gentle friends, joy.
And fresh days of love accompany your hearts. Thank you.
Thank you. Will. Louise. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
Louise, yes.
Lovely days.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. It is wonderful to be taken outside the everyday.
Well, and back into
outside
the
back in,
back in again. No, but the language is so rich and we're not aware of it in our everyday lives, and you've really brought it to life. And I'm going to go out and buy that book straight away.
Good for you.
Thank
so
you. But
inspiring.
if anyone else is interested in the book,
I think there are lots of people.
We're going to be able to flash up that QR code again, and
will.
And you'll be able to follow the way to it. Also, if you, I'll put it into the chat here. You can go to everyday-shakespeare.com, and you can look up your birthday quote.
Oh yes, an awful lot of people use the book. The first thing they do is they go to the page that is their birthday, and hopefully they'll find a quote there that really sort of resonates with them and makes them feel having a happy day.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, there's the QR code. Wonderful.
Yeah, that's right.
Wonderful. There is one question that I think I have time to pose. It's from Inesi Klausa, and who asks, well, he's saying that he needs to teach or introduce his students to the language of literature and how it's created. And his question is, where should they start? Perhaps with your book might be a good place to start.
How literature's language is created.
Yes, I think a lot of people have done that, because you see, you start off with the quotation. The quotation resonates with you.
Yes.
The student then thinks, oh, maybe Shakespeare is for me. Where should I go? Well, now the thing is, at the bottom of every page, we give an actual context saying where the quotation comes from. And one of the first things I would do if I were teaching here in this context, I would say, well, let's find it in the original scene. And you can do that by going to the back of the book where there's an index and it tells you exactly which scene it comes from, which line it is, and so on. And then it links you to our website that Ben and I did, shakespeareswords.com. Look it up there, and then you've got the scene. And what I would then do is get the students to act that scene out, or at least as much of it as you've got time to do. Because you're always saying this, Ben, aren't you? Shakespeare is for the stage, not for the page.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of the best ways to make it your own is to speak it out loud, to dare to get these words into your mouths. We're not so used to putting into our mouths and speaking to each other in such poetry or eloquence. And I think a lot of people are probably a little afraid to, but certainly with these lines, they're much more accessible.
Yeah, they think they're going to get it wrong. And it doesn't matter if you get it wrong.
Well, they think that there's only one way to say it, but in actual fact, it's the feeling that you infuse or how you interpret it.
Yeah, and people who say...
And different people might interpret it in different ways, but that's interesting. It's being daring, as you said.
And no matter where you're from, no matter what accent you have, whether it's strong or thick or whatever, the only sound that's right for Shakespeare is your accent and your voice and your sound, because you want to speak it from the heart. Don't ever be afraid to speak poetry out loud.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. This has been an amazing talk and so complimentary to Chia's talk. I think both have been really inspiring, and what a wonderful way to celebrate the end of this year. It's 180 years, but I'm sure there'll be another 180 years or more, and lots of new words coming in. I think Shakespeare created something. He invented something like 1,700 words or something like that, didn't he? New words.
The first recorded user of them. Often he didn't invent them. He just took them off the street and put them down for the first time.
Right. Wonderful.
So it's been so lovely to be back on the Winter Fair and see everyone and so many people from all around the world. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone, and thanks for listening to us.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you both so much. Just amazing, extraordinary.
Wonderful.
Isn't it, Louise? It's great just to have
Yes.
Ben back and us sort of getting the whole band back
I
together.
know, I know. Great gig.
Yeah. What a gig, huh? What a
Yeah,
job, Louise.
totally rocking.
These awesome events. All right, so I've just got, I think, actually, there's nothing else to say.
There's
I think
nothing, and
that's
maybe
it.
just to remind people that they will receive an email within a week with the certificate of attendance,
Let me
the
put that up here.
slides of the of Chia's presentation, and also
Yeah.
the recording of the event.
Exactly. Yeah, so you're going to get a certificate. So if you're watching on Zoom, you're going to get a certificate in an email in the next week, not tomorrow, not the next day, but sort of within a week. You'll get an email that's got 2 links. One link will be to a certificate with your name on it, and the second one will be a link to a virtual goodie bag with some nice presents from us, and also the recordings of Chia and Ben and David, and also Chia's slides as well. So it'll all kind of be sort of neatly packaged into that email for you. So just look out for that. Also in your junk and your spam, it might be there too. One thing to mention as well, if you weren't aware already, there is an Advancing Learning podcast now. It started last week. If you listen to podcasts and if you are an ELT teacher, you might fit into that bucket, seeing as you're in this event. Then you might want to give it a listen. It's me and Harry Waters and special guests joining us talking about all things ELT. So if you're looking for something to listen to on the way to work, or when you're lying up in bed, or like I do, I listen to podcasts when my kids are watching something on telly. I'll take that half an hour out and listen to a podcast while they're watching Octonauts or something. Anyway, so there's a podcast there for you if you're interested. And I think that's about all to say. What do you think, Louise? Anything else?
Yes. Thank you very, very much, everybody. Really
have a lovely day.
Afternoon or evening or morning, whatever it has been for each one of you, and see you again soon.
Ta-ra!
Bye.